Professor Fitzgibbons, and it's nice to see you all here. And we're really excited to have some special guests here today. Our third presenter called me today, and she was felled by a really heinous sinus infection. That I think the less details you hear about it, probably the better. But one of those things where she kept thinking she was going to be better in time to come, and then finally it just was not going to happen. So she apologizes, but she did give me some interesting insights on like her whole career trajectory. And so I might just, during the Q&A, I might just throw them in there. I think the way we're going to set this up is we'll have Isabel Cahulas, our first speaker. She'll talk to us about her experiences. Stephanie Grossman will then talk about hers. And then there's going to be plenty of time for questions and answers. And then afterward, I hope you'll stay and we'll, just talk geekily about English sorts of things. Perhaps on, food things or something, since it's the theme of the evening was a movable feast, and then you have some food. All right, so without further ado, why don't we just get started? And Isabel, you just want to take it away?
Sure. Hi, I'm Isabel. I graduated 2010, and my major was English, both writing and literature concentration, so I had double concentration. And right now I'm working as a project manager for a jewelry industry association. We focus on enhancing the image of silver jewelry. So silver jewelry is not just a fashion item, it's a high-end luxury item as well. And in my marketing position, I write press releases and organize fashion shows, and I work with trade magazines, consumer magazines, advertising, social media. So all these things have been really important to my job, and it being an English major has really helped me in being doing everything that I'm doing for work. So it's just a lot of it's just a lot of managing and creative thinking and strategy and memorizing everything and kind of knowing who people are and remembering people's names. I know if you guys are in your upper level English classes and you're reading a million books and keeping all your characters straight, it's kind of translates into the real world because you need to know who everyone is all the time. So I guess that's how I'm using my English major in my work.
Do you want to talk about how you ended up in that position?
Oh, right. So I interned at this jewelry company in my senior year of college, and I met my boss through a part-time job that I had. He was a client there, and he was just starting this business. So I don't think you guys should be afraid to try anything new and things that you're passionate about on the side outside of college. And you just never know where it's gonna go. Basically, yeah.
Then I also work in marketing, but I graduated in 2011, and I was also in English, literature, and writing, double concentration, and then I had a business minor as well. And right now I work in audiobook marketing at Penguin Random House. We're mainly doing marketing to libraries and schools, but I do a little bit of retail marketing on the side, so that would be for booksellers or consumers. But basically, I just recently started in May, but I've been in and out of the publishing industry since I graduated. When I first graduated in 2011, I was applying for publishing jobs because I was an English major, and I'm like, okay, I want to be in publishing, And so when I was applying for those jobs, I realized that I should probably apply for sort of any of the publishing jobs that weren't editorial. So something that not everybody was trying to get, so I wouldn't have as much competition. So I applied for a subsidiary rights position in publishing, and if you don't know what that is, it's basically if you work in subsidiary rights, you're selling the rights for books to be published by other publishers. So Simon & Schuster, we had a bunch of books, and so then we would sell the rights to a German publisher so they could publish it in German. But again, when I was applying, I didn't necessarily know what that was, but I still applied anyway. And then because nobody else seemed to really know what it was either, I had not much competition. And so then I got it lucky and got an interview, and then that was sort of my foot in the door into publishing. then I was there for almost 2 years, and my boss was a little crazy, and so I didn't really want to be there anymore. And so I wanted to get into the marketing aspect of books, but it was proving to be a little hard, so I decided to sort of go out of the publishing industry because I thought, oh, maybe I'll give it a try. And so I started at a tech startup, and I didn't really like that much either. And so when I reached back out to a contact I had made at Simon & Schuster, and then he started giving me some freelance opportunities to do book marketing and publicity on the side, which is why I think like it's good because you never know, what contacts you'll make when. And so then I started doing that on the side, and then that sort of helped me get back into the book publishing world. And I created a website showcasing some of the marketing and publicity I had been doing, and I think that helped me stand out, the next time that I was applying to publishing jobs again. And then applied to Penguin Random House for the audiobook marketing position, and then it sort of went from there. So yeah, it's been nice. It's been nice to be back working with books, I'd say.
You want to talk about the alumni factor?
Oh, right. I mean, when I was applying for jobs, probably the best bet I ever had with getting an interview was reaching out to Marist alumni in all different majors, in all different fields. I know the website has an alumni network that you can tap into and get everyone's contact right away. And, everyone's very open to shadowing at their work or getting you an interview with HR or just coming by for a day to talk or getting coffee. Like, Marist Alumni Network is probably the nicest network ever. And I think that you guys should do that and talk to as many people as you can. Call random people. Everyone is very, very interested in talking to you and helping you grow your career. I have a story from this one girl I know. She now works for Cosmopolitan. She's a sales manager in the publishing side. And she went to FSU, and how she got her publishing job was she went through the magazines that she wanted to work for, and she went through the mastheads, and she emailed everyone. It was like, hi, I'm looking for a job. I just want to talk, or anything like that. And that's how she got her job. You just have to be open to talking to a lot of people and being receptive to them, and they're more than happy to help you. Yeah. Networking. It's the thing.
I'd say I tried reaching out to alumni as well when I was looking for my second job or trying to leave Simon & Schuster, and I think it was sort of like I was also applying to other jobs on the side on my own, and sort of that's been my mode is somehow I've been applying randomly and then getting interviews, which is not usually the case, but yeah, when I reached out to alumni too, everybody was just so nice, and I had tons of great phone calls with them. Like I spoke with one guy who was in marketing at ESPN, and if I had been a little bit more interested in sports, I think he was going to give me a job there, or interview with me. But then he was like, would you be interested? And I was like, well, I don't know too much about sports. And he goes, okay, well, maybe not. I should have pretended, but I didn't want to be stuck working on sports.
I mean, I work for a small company. Stephanie works for a more recognizable company. A couple of girls in my grade that were also English majors. One of them works for About.com. She runs the home vertical, so all the blogs and the posts that go under the home and lifestyle side. One girl works for the Bronx Zoo. She's in guest programming. So she organizes all the consumer-facing programs when you go to the zoo, and there's like that lights show at Christmas time. She does that. One of my other friends works in nonprofit. She works for a nonprofit that helps kids in Africa with educational programs, and she does grant writing and works on websites. So it's just really open, and you should just be open to talking to everyone.
Yeah, I'd say a big thing is, when you're graduating as an English major, sometimes you think, should I do publishing or should I be a teacher? And when really, an English major can be great for so many things, anything creative, anything that takes some critical thinking skills. And so, again, to echo what Isabel is saying, to just be open, maybe go for a job that seems a little, like weird, or like a small company, and you're like, oh, this is some weird, like, client services position, but hey, maybe I'll try that, and sometimes it can work out to your benefit and get you started in the professional world.
One of the things that Jen Carey said, who again, because of this, he came in late, has a sinus infection, so couldn't get here. And right now, she got a library science master's 6 years after graduating, and now works on doing like analysis of data for the Danbury, Connecticut schools. But it's like interesting student data, and she's helping like direct the curriculum and stuff like that. She said that she felt like it took her a while to name her skills as an English major, like that there were skills that were marketable, but that she wasn't used to like talking about them that way. So I was wondering like if you could talk about that a little bit, like skills you came out with that you didn't really think of as skills, but it turns out they are. Is that like a...
Well, I'd say that for one, I mean, especially with working in marketing, social media has become such a huge component of that. Almost every marketing job, you're doing Facebook or Twitter in some form, or writing blog posts or something. And so I'd say that when I was graduating, somebody, it was sort of a mentor that my parents connected me with. This guy said, maybe you should revamp your resume and put that you are fluent in social media and that you're active in it and everything. And you don't even think of that because you're on Facebook every day, like you're using it for recreational purposes, you're talking to friends, you're messaging, but really that's building, lots of skills that are going to be necessary if you're going into a creative industry. So I'd say definitely if you're creating a resume, make sure to put social media on there and don't just think that just because you use it, for friend purposes doesn't mean that you don't know how to use it for professional reasons.
Right. This is really fun. I was just working on my resume and trying to put skills in there. Proofreading is something I put down, revision, copywriting. You're probably all good written and verbal communicators, and just things like that you don't really think about right away. Being good at relationships, and that's like having strong relationship skills, like that's something that a lot of employers are looking for, because a lot of employers have people that they outsource and that they work with in publishing and whatever, and you have to be able to keep up with those relationships and be good at being on top of everything, and those are all skills that we're looking for.
Time management. And I'd say also if any of you have ever gotten something published, even just in a magazine here or newspaper, like you can say published writer in your skill, within your accomplishment section or your skills section.
Yeah, I still put that I was published in the Mosaic twice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's a great talking point.
It is.
Well, do you feel like you learned things doing, like, could you talk a little bit about your extracurriculars and how that translated into, your life after in the professional world?
Yeah. I was on The Circle. I was a features editor for The Circle for 4 years. And I worked with all the staff writers and budgets and layouts and all of that. So that works in like a journalism type of background. And in your creative writing classes, like you would always submit that to the Mosaic, and now you're part of the Literary Arts Society, and you could be published as published by your peers, and that's always good. What else did I do?
I know,
what else
so
did I
much.
do? I think those are basically my 2 things.
Yeah, I only had a couple of extracurriculars that I really focused on too. I was in the Literary Arts Society from sophomore year on, but then in junior year I became the vice president. And as the vice president, you also have, not only are you helping the president and, being on the e-board and learning all of those skills, but one of the primary things we had to do, that I had to do at least, was set up sort of like charity, sorts of charity things. So for example, I did a book drive and then had a bunch of people bring in books from home after a break, and then we donated them to a library, or the local Poughkeepsie library actually. And so even just things like that can really go in there when you're in an interview, and then they say, oh, so what are your hobbies? And then you can talk about, oh, well, I was, or not even necessarily hobbies, I guess it would be your activities. And so that was a good talking point for me in interviews, where I could say I was on the executive board of a club and did something with it. And then another thing that I did when I was here was I did some co-editing for the Fox Forum, which I don't know if that's still around.
It still
It
is.
is, okay.
Yeah.
It's
I think
but
the deadline is like in 2 days for
guys, submit your papers.
Yeah.
That's basically what I was doing with that. Like I think so I did some editing for that because I thought that it would be really fun to like read other people's papers and everything. But even when I was there, I mean, I don't know if this turned out to get us that many more submissions, but we wanted to keep reminding professors to tell their students about the Fox Forum, because some professors have students that write great papers, but then the students don't know what else to do with them besides sort of put them away and put their A like on their sleeve, and that's it. So basically we printed up little flyers and put them in all the teachers' mailboxes to remind them, please make sure that you tell your great students who write great papers to submit. And so I think we had a little more submissions that year, maybe like 2 more or something, but it helped.
So yeah, does everyone know what Fox Forum is, or does somebody not? You guys all know, like, okay, you submit the paper and it comes out like every once a semester.
Yeah, once every I think it is. But I think it's a great thing. But so that was another thing that I think was a talking point in my interviews, that I could say I edited a paper, and then on top of it, I edited a literary magazine, and then on top of it, did some marketing efforts to get the word out about this around campus.
Yeah, and with your papers that you're really proud of, like, use them as your writing samples. If you're submitting to a newspaper job or a PR job and they're looking for writing samples, like, you can use all of those, and they're more than happy to see you writing from a technical standpoint and a creative standpoint and mechanical and everything like that. So I still use some of those. So, like,
How did you save them, like, physically? Did you just have like a flash drive with all of them on there, or like what archive did you use for your work?
I think I still have some printed, and I have. I think I just have a file folder on my computer.
Yeah.
And I would put together a portfolio that kind of shows the different types of writing styles that you are specializing in. And it should just be a little spiral binder. It doesn't have to be the whole paper. It could be 3 paragraphs that you really liked, and throw that together with a heading that says literary analysis or creative writing and poetry. Just stick it all together and present it when you can.
Yeah, I'd say that's a big key. I think a lot of people don't necessarily walk into interviews for jobs with a briefcase full of accomplishments, essentially. Like, they come in, maybe they have their resume on them, and that's it. And so I found, too, that if you bring something, and even if nobody looks through it, even if you just have it in front of you, they say, okay, this person, knows their stuff, they mean business, and it makes you look a lot more professional than just walking in with your resume, printed out on.
It's weird that you still, like, it's still a physical object.
Yeah.
Like, that's still, I have a friend who's a creative writer, he did a lot of freelancing, and now he publishes children's books. And he literally has this binder, and it's like sort of messy and overflowing, but it's, it's just this physical symbol of stuff in addition to just holding these individual things. So, could you guys talk about, you've talked about writing. Could you talk about, like, visual stuff? Like, do you both, like, has that ended up being part of your work, like a kind of visual rhetoric or like communicating that way too? Like,
I think so. It's actually my company specializes in silver jewelry, and jewelry is very visual. It's, you like the look of it, that's why you're going to buy it. So you need to have individual, unique words to describe silver jewelry. That's kind of hard because it's the same thing all the time. Like, how many times can you say that it's shiny? So kind of a lot of times. And how many times can you say that you love something, and you need to, you have to think of words like, I covet this, or I admire this work, or I admire this design. And it's just that type of, all of those synonyms and describing words are all things that you should keep in the back of your head if you're going to focus on one type of consumer product. I know when Christy Donnelly, she graduated in my grade, she worked for Nickelodeon for a long time, and you couldn't use the word fun in any of their copy. So you have to find different ways to say things are fun without saying fun. And that was probably the hardest part of her internship, her job. So, yeah, it's like so weird,
Go to
right?
the thesaurus.
Why not? Were they worried it was just overused? or
Yeah, it's
something?
just kind of common.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun, but what does that mean?
What does that mean?
But see, that leads into the question that I would like to ask, and it's in the vein of what Professor Fitzgibbons has been asking you. But have you ever felt that being an English major actually gave you an edge over other majors you might have had here, like a communications major? Has having a major that focuses on imagination and creativity helped you, or do you feel you got stronger writing skills here than a communications major? I don't want to badmouth other majors, but I am at pains to have the people in this room feel like the ways in which they're training themselves are going to be genuinely valuable out in the workplace. And you've said a lot to that, but I wonder if it ever rises to the level of a positive advantage over more pre-professional kinds of majors that you might have chosen.
Yeah, I think just as an English major, when you're applying to a job, especially one that isn't in publishing, you sort of stand out. Like, because a lot of people that are applying are usually a business administration major or maybe communications, which is, I'd say, if anything, communications would be the equivalent, like, business aspect of English. But so that might be pretty desirable. But at the same time, as an English major, they're not used to seeing resumes coming in from people who know how to write and can actually say, I've written 20 papers at school, and whether they were creative or academic. And I'd say that business majors don't really focus on that as much. And so I'd say that especially when you're looking for jobs that or when you're looking for a job that has a very creative aspect to it or that has writing involved, they want to see an English major there, I believe. And then, like, even when I went for my second job at the tech startup, that was for a client services / relationship marketing job. And most of the people that applied and that got the jobs there were, like, some of them were in theater, some of them had been in biomedical science, and like it stands out sometimes when you have a creative major or something different, like other than communications or other than business administration. So I'd say, yeah, definitely. And then just the fact that you went 4 years being an English major and writing so much, like, you can really confidently say, I know how to write, I know how to be creative.
Yeah, and definitely with even little mundane things that you would need to do at your job, like write emails, it's really important that you can communicate exactly what you need at that time, because if someone on the other end doesn't understand what you're saying, you're going to have to do this back and forth so much just because you're not clear. And I think being an English major has helped with that. I get a lot of comments that my emails are always clear and and precise, and they know exactly what they need to do, and that just helps everything kind of move along. I've never been asked specifically about my English major, but I think it helps with when people recognize what your skills are. They're like, oh, it's because you're an English major, that type of thing. It's never been, oh, you're an English major, then this. It's always been, these are your skills. Oh, it's because you're an English major. It's been another way.
And I think I saw a New York Times article a few years ago. I don't remember what the title was, but it did say something along the lines of, why the English major is, becoming really powerful and why everyone's hiring English majors. So you guys should look it up. Unfortunately,
I heard that one.
Yeah, you heard
it was
it.
on. Was it Wall Street Journal or New
Oh, maybe
York
it was Wall
Times,
Street Journal.
maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a business entrepreneur, and he was writing about why he hires English majors because they think critically and they're creative and passionate about their jobs. And what's that?
Empathetic.
Yeah.
And so both of you had internships that actually sort of led to the field, sort of?
Mine not so much.
What was yours, Stephanie?
Well, so basically, sort of like I used some connections to work in journalism a bit. So
Okay.
I had interned. Okay, so I had interned at the Putnam County News and Recorder, which is a local newspaper. But then that led to interning at Fox News. Don't hate me. But so like through that connection, I interned at Fox News in the specials department, working sort of on research for documentaries and everything that they sometimes air a special on the weekends about cancer or things like that. So I worked on those sorts of things. So that didn't really lead me to my job, but it made me stand out. I think for sure when I, had that name on my resume, and then people, were like, oh, who's this person that interned at Fox News and wants to work at Simon & Schuster now or something, So that was a talking point.
Yeah, I interned. I've been at my company for almost 5 years, so I've been there since I graduated college. I interned for one summer in 2009, going into my senior year. And I actually just met my boss at one of my part-time jobs. He was a client there and was just starting my company, Silver Promotion Service, so he asked if I wanted to do a trade show. And I did, so I went and did that and tried that and just continued doing little jobs for him, like organizing press events and writing press releases and editing copy, and that just became part of my job, and then my job kind of grew from there. So I guess I would say don't be afraid to take on more tasks that your bosses give you, because then they're just going to trust you and let you go and fly with it, and then if you do well, then you're golden. So yeah.
I know Jen, who couldn't be here, she said that she wished she had taken more advantage of, she was a lit concentration, so you're not required to have an internship. She felt like as an undergrad, she could have done a little more to test the waters a little bit through an internship, if only to find out fields that she wasn't going to be interested in. Like, she had thought publishing, but and then she ended up like working at a bookstore for a while. But she learned more. The more she learned about publishing, the more she realized it wasn't for her. But that was like after graduation, and she thought it would have been useful to kind of, it's weird, like kind of rule some things out, as well as like maybe just finding a particular job. Because this really should be about like, getting employment, but also like matching your passion with that employment, right? You don't want to end up somewhere where you feel dead inside.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it started out that way for me, though. I felt like, I think that this is something that everyone should keep in mind, too, is that, when you first graduate, you might not get the job of your dreams. The second job might not be the job of your dreams, and I mean, I'm still seeing if this third job is, but, I'm sure I'll find something. But basically, like, my first job, I had a really crazy boss, and even though it was at a great, a huge, well-known publishing company, she didn't make it fun for me. And so, but you also do get a thicker skin. Like, looking back, I actually appreciated that she was a little crazy, and I knew that she had good intentions. But, it sort of like pushed me to go further and be like, okay, I don't want to be just working for this woman anymore. Like, I want to work somewhere else. And then that sort of pushed me out of there. And then when I got the job at the tech startup and didn't really like where that was going either, that pushed me to reach out to somebody else. And then that led to freelance opportunities and stuff. So I'd say that, it might not be perfect right away, or it might be perfect right away and then you move on to something else and then it's not so perfect. And so it might oscillate as your career goes. And I think both of us are sort of like young in our careers, so we don't know like where everything is going to lead. But I think to keep in mind that, having maybe not the most perfect job ever does lead to a thicker skin, and it motivates you to do better, I'd say.
Right. I mean, I love my job, and I've loved my job for so long, since 2009, I guess. But it's really different because publishing is such a big industry, and jewelry is such a small industry, and jewelry is very niche. And you have basically the gold people, the platinum people, the diamond people, and the silver people, and then everyone else. And everyone grows up knowing each other, and you just have your job for forever, is what I can tell. So I guess you just have to learn if that's something that you like, and explore industries that aren't the biggest industries in the world, and see if those are, where your passions are, and just follow that.
We have a Facebook group with alums, and we've had it since I think like your graduation year, like 2010. And so, you kind of get a better sense than I think we maybe used to have of like what it's like after graduation. You really used to be like, see you later, like with graduation, and then maybe you bumped into someone at Stop and Shop, but maybe you like never saw people again. And now there is a way to like hear from people. And I mean, my general sense, thinking not just about you, but about like your cohort and other people is that the road is sometimes like bumpy. Like, it's not like these other kids that are graduating and it's all set for them on May 22nd and you know, everyone's like, oh, they're all, you know, perfectly set, but that you do end up somewhere interesting. But I was wondering if you could talk about what you've seen in you or your peers, like you were talking about a thick skin, like, are there ways to develop a kind of resiliency when you have to deal with people that are like interrogating you, like, what are you going to do with that English major? Or like, you know, like that freak out moment, like, have you had that moment or seen other people have it and like how they get through it, sort of?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I was fine. I think a couple of my friends have, who are also English majors in my grade, have kind of gone in and out of things. They've tried out master's programs but didn't really like it, or tried out smaller places and then bigger places. So I think you just need to really love what you do, and in that journey of trying to find what you want to do, you can narrow down things that you hate. I think it's more important to love what you're doing than have a paycheck. I mean, that's what I think, yeah.
Yeah, and I'd say, too, I mean, speaking to, I guess, my experience with this, when I was graduating, I didn't have a job upon graduation. You know, I graduated thinking, oh, I have no idea what's going to happen. I'm going to go home and, like, work at my dad's office and then, like, apply for jobs and see. So I'd say that, you know, a big thing is to not feel dismayed, like, just because May is coming up and you don't have a full-time job. Like, majority of people aren't going to have it, and that's just the way the economy is right now. And then on top of it, it's just, you know, it's hard. Like, you have a lot of schoolwork to do. How many times are you going to apply to a job throughout the semester? And sometimes you can submit resumes, you know, 50 times and still, like, not see something sometimes. So I think, you know, don't feel dismayed if you're reaching graduation and don't have anything set up. And I definitely know some English majors also that, I mean, I mainly have stayed in touch with a lot of English majors that have ended up in publishing or trying to do something with it. So I'd say one of my friends, Kelly, you know, she's working at a tech startup that sort of has a publishing side to it because they publish ebooks. And so she's been doing really, really great there. And she found that job through looking at bookjobs.com. And, you know, just sort of came up with it. But she had gotten her master's in screenwriting before that. And, you know, so some people go on, like Isabel said, to try a master's program or anything like that. I have a friend, Nick, who is, you know Nick Sweeney.
Yeah,
so he's, you know, been trying to get a job in publishing for a while and hasn't necessarily come across anything, but he's still trying and has been doing creative writing and everything on the side. Another girl that I know, Christy, who was a year younger than me, she was applying for...
Christy Sheehan?
Yeah, Christy Sheehan. She was determined to get an editorial position, an editorial assistant position. And so when she reached out to me, I said to her, like, try going for another type of position, but she didn't listen. She didn't want to. So she took like a year of just applying over and over again to editorial positions. And then eventually she started working, I think it's Columbia University Press. Oxford University Press.
And it was a Marist grad that
That got
her the interview.
So, okay,
Yeah.
look at that, you
Yeah.
know. So she didn't give up. So there is something to persistence as well.
Yeah.
Like, you have to, you know, if you're willing to have some patience, like, you'll find and you really know that you want something, you just got to keep applying, I'd say, and then develop a thick skin through that. And then I'd say, you know, sometimes the only way to develop a truly thick skin to other people, like to negative people, is to work with them. Like, you can't necessarily forge it. You have to sort of be dealing with somebody who isn't really that great, and then you sort of have to move on, and as time goes on, it gets easier. So don't be afraid if you end up having a boss that's not so great or a coworker that's not so great, because you guys will, you know, get through it and be better for it. So
Yeah, it's true. Just be persistent, and, you know, you're there to do what you have to do, and other people, if they're going to be, like, negative while they're there, that's not really your problem. You just have to keep doing well for yourself. I mean, it's so hard because your coworkers are supposed to be a team, but you also have to stand out on your own, in your job and as an individual, and not just as, you know, employee editorial assistant number 3. Like, if you want to be the associate editor, like, you have to stand out from number 1, number 2. So just be yourselves and keep working hard, and that's all you can really do.
Maybe we could open it up for questions?
I got one more.
Okay.
If you would indulge me. Has your English major continued to mean something to you beyond the career? Do you read serious fiction with satisfaction, or do you continue to write creatively, or I mean, does it have a bearing even beside the profession?
I wish I had more time to write because I really enjoyed the creative writing side of my major. I don't have that much time to write poetry, but I like to kind of put it into my work and into my social media and into my press releases, so it's an interesting text for someone else to read. And I do like reading fiction more, just to get out of reading business journals and industry news and all of those things. So yeah, it's still a big passion.
Yeah. And I'd say being in publishing, I'm sort of immersed in books all the time. And you would think that's amazing, but then you sort of get overwhelmed with knowing how many books are actually out there and how many you're never going to read in your lifetime. And, I have like tons and tons of free books piling up on my desk, and it's starting to like overwhelm me a little bit. But at the same time, yeah, like I think that I always feel very, very nostalgic when I think back to my English major and everything that it taught me. And, it kept me in the know about books, so that then eventually, like, working in publishing, like, I feel like I have a really good background in it, and that I know what I'm talking about. And then even with that, like, I definitely have aspired to do some more creative writing, and it's sort of gone in and out. Like, when I first graduated, I was so happy that I had so much time to write, because I didn't have any homework anymore, that I, started writing on the train rides, because I was commuting back and forth from my job and then back home to my parents' house, and I had an hour train ride in between. And so I was writing a little more doing that. I started submitting stories to literary magazines and got like one published on like a website. It's not that big of a deal, but I got paid $10. That's it. But yeah, so like I started doing that a lot more. But then I moved closer to work, and I started doing more of a job search for a new job and everything. And then life got a little crazy, and so I haven't been able to do as much writing since then. But it's always in the back of my mind, and it's been suggested to me that, just try and take some time during lunch, or, write one sentence a day or something. Just try, if you're trying to write and you want to also have a career where you're making, a lot of money, not necessarily writing. So like if you have a full-time job, you got to try to find ways to work it in if that's something that you care about as well.
But now Mara's right. You guys should ask your question.
Do you want to ask a question?
I was wondering, Steph, could you talk about how do you meet people face to face that you want to network with? How would you find them, and how do you establish a connection with them where you're going to be able to contact them and so on?
Like within publishing or within like everything? Okay, so I guess in publishing, what I'd say is like, and I think that this can apply to any industry you work in, especially if you work at a big company. If you sort of come across somebody's name and you're like, this person is a really cool editor, or this person is the marketing, director, like I want to get to know them. You can, like, people are really, really open to just setting up time to sit down and talk with them. And so what I did when I was in publishing is, I sort of came across some really nice editors every once in a while. And I was like, can I just sit down with you and sort of like ask you about publishing and ask you about, because I am a writer and I know that everybody here is a writer too, but I just like, I'm wondering, what's the, what is it that it really takes to get a book published? And so then I went and sat down with editors doing that. And then on top of that, I made connections, within work, but then I also was motivated to go to events outside of work. And so, and that could be, like, I'm sure that you probably go to networking events as well, or just like events in general. And then in the publishing world, there's lots of like literary events where there's an author reading and things like that. But, so you can go to an author reading, you can go to a conversation that between authors or something that's usually at, say, a Barnes & Noble or, a local bookstore. And then you can meet people that are, really interesting and that probably also work in publishing or, along those lines, something along those lines. Like when you're at events like that, people are there because they want to be there and because they care about the subject. And so you can't really go wrong with going up to somebody and asking them, so like, what do you do? Like, do you like this book or do you like this author? And then I'd say also as I got further into my career a little bit, I created my own like personal business cards to have on me, so that if I was ever in a situation where I met somebody that I really wanted to network with, I could just give them my business card, and usually they would give me their business card back and everything. That's sort of how I met Dave. But but yeah, so it's just I think that that's a big part of it too, is like having information on you that you can just sort of hand out to somebody in any sort of networking situation. Yeah.
Sorry. And it's important to have a business card for the purpose
Yeah.
Steph is saying. But if you don't already work in publishing, you might wonder, well, what do I put on my business card, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why when she wasn't working in publishing, I advised her to start up a website,
Yeah.
like a book
That's true,
blog. And the only purpose for setting it up, or the main purpose, was just so that she could have a business card linking to it. And it didn't even matter if anyone went to look at that. But if you hand someone your business card, they'll hand you theirs in return, and then you can email them and say, hey, it was nice meeting you last night, and establish a connection that way.
Yeah. You always make sure to email them within a couple days. Sometimes I've given it a week or a couple months sometimes, but I'd reach out and be like, oh, it was so nice to meet you at this thing. And actually that sort of creating my website and everything that I did for I did that for some of the freelance marketing and publicity I was doing when I was sort of trying to get back into publishing. And then my business card linked to that. But then it turned out that I went to an event once and gave the card to the right person, and then that person started asking me to do book marketing publicity for some self-published authors that she knew. And so you just never know who is gonna, give you an opportunity. And if you have physical things to give them, if you have or even if you just have a presence online somewhere that isn't Facebook, or you can stand out a lot more when you meet the right person.
Yeah, I use LinkedIn a lot. I try and keep my profile on LinkedIn updated as often as I can with my professional accomplishments, and they have all these cool tools where you can upload the work that you've done, images of you at shows or whatever, or anything you've written. You can upload all of those things and kind of keep track of everyone on in their digital address book. And I go to trade shows all the time, so I talk to everyone at a trade show. I meet new designers and talk to them about their work, and it's really connecting with them on a personal level as well as a professional level. They like that you're also a human and care about them as a human versus just them as, oh, I'm a big designer, I have a manufacturer, I have this job title. And if you can connect with people on that kind of in that kind of way, then they're going to be more receptive to talking to you more openly, rather than just, this is your job and this is what you have to do and all those things. Mm-hmm. People are really friendly when you get out there.
Yeah.
It's really weird. You never think that people are friendly or willing to help you, but they are. Even the directors and editors-in-chief and top publishers, they're so nice and willing to help you. Just talk.
Yeah, especially because so many people are afraid to go up to them, and so they don't see it as often, and so then they probably, get really, or feel really flattered if you go up to them and say, hey, can I talk to you about this? I have a question about my career, and, they're a lot of people are very, very receptive to that.
Question?
Yeah.
I'm interested in publishing, books, book publishing.
Mhm.
Do you think it's beneficial to try and get a job right out of college instead of going to graduate school?
Well, that was the route that I took. And if you were going to be going to grad school, what would you be going for? An English major? Or would it be a master's in English, or would it be a MFA in creative writing, or?
I'm not sure. I think a master's in.
Okay. So, I contemplated that as well. And I'd say that I definitely know people that have graduated from Marist and gotten into MFA programs, and because that's what they want to do. And I think it's weird because I still have questions sometimes about MFA programs and whether or not they're, and I think Dave could talk about this too, but as as a new grad, and if you feel like you want to get experience in the real world, I'd say, and if you think that that's going to inform you as a person and as a writer, then I'd say it's worth it to maybe go for, a job outside of academia. Well, don't go into academia. Go for a job like that you wouldn't necessarily, go for a job that you might not necessarily consider. Go for a job in publishing. Go for, something that'll get you some real world experience. If you think that that's very important to you. To me, that was important. I didn't necessarily want to go from school to school to school and then, not necessarily get out into the real world in a way that could inform me as a writer and as, a professional. So that being said, if you do want to get an MFA right away, because I've found that now I'm at the point where I'm like, I don't know when I'll do it because, if I don't get a scholarship to it or if I don't have somebody else paying for it or whatever it is, like I don't know when I would be willing to take on some of the debt. And so I'd say, and Dave is probably going to say this too, that like if you don't want to go into debt over a master or over an MFA in creative writing or over something that might not necessarily bring you to a job in the future, which could be, if you want to get a job in academia, if you want to be a teacher and everything, like getting a PhD totally makes sense. Like that's sort of how you have to do it. An MFA in creative writing sometimes, like I think it can help you in a way. I definitely know people that have MFAs in creative writing that are now in publishing because that just helped them stand out, for sure. So it's sort of like maybe just don't go into debt over it, I'd say. But if it's something you really want, then you should pursue it. Then maybe Dave, you can speak to that a little more, or he's.
I did basically an MFA in creative writing and screenwriting. And I would not necessarily recommend it. I would definitely get some. I would get some experience. I would not go straight from undergrad into an MFA in creative writing, especially not as a means of getting a job in publishing, because I don't think it would help that much. If you just want a job in publishing, there are. Do you know the program like Lisa Rogers did?
Yeah. So I didn't do these programs, but there's two programs like through Columbia University has a publishing program where you like for one summer study all the aspects of publishing, and then that's really, really helpful in getting you into connections and stuff into the publishing world. Like most of the people I know that work in publishing came in through either the Columbia program or there's also an NYU program that also does the same exact thing and gives you connections and gives you a whole entire summer of focusing on the publishing industry and seeing if you want to try it out. But I didn't end up doing. I didn't do that. And it's in New York. That's one other thing to think about. If you want to be in publishing, like you sort of have to be open to the idea of being in New York for a very long time.
I was planning on moving to the city
Around the
city.
Yeah. So then that's good. That's helpful because a lot of just the literary scene right now is in New York City, and I think there's been a lot of independent publishers popping up in different cities like Alexandria, Virginia, or Portland, Oregon. But I'd say the main, like the big houses are in New York, and so that's one thing to keep in mind if you're trying to be in publishing and want to be in an office. New York is the place to be right now, but it's expensive. And did you?
Should I say more about? If you want to be a writer, having an MFA can teach you some valuable skills. But no one's really going to give you any. No one's going to hire you for a job really, or give you a publishing contract because you have an MFA. Uh-huh. So really, you would only do it if you can do it without taking on too much debt. First of all. And to look at it as an opportunity to give yourself time to write and develop your skills and to make connections, because you are going to make connections with the faculty and with the other writers in the program. But go into it with reasonable expectations, and just don't. Whatever you do, don't just say, "Oh, I've already got all this undergrad student debt. I don't know what to do with my life. Let me just go to get an MFA in creative writing, and then I'll figure it out later." Because then you end up with even more debt, and you have just no idea what to do, and it's not going to get you. It's not going to serve as a credential to get you a job necessarily.
Oh, we've got two people. I'm so happy we have two questions.
I'm kind of torn between going into like screenwriting, going into editorial work. So I was kind of wondering, job specifically,
Uh-huh.
but could kind of like give me the skills I need to excel in those positions.
So those, I'd say, editorial internships would be good. Those are sort of hard to find, but I think if you want to be an editorial, like sort of having any sort of internship in publishing would definitely be very helpful. When it comes to screenwriting, Dave, I don't know if you could talk about that, speak to that more because you have the screen.
Yeah. I mean, essentially, yeah. Like if you want to work in book publishing, you basically have to be in New York. If you want to do anything in film, you have to basically be in Los Angeles, which is where I did my MFA. And I never did this, but what I would recommend, if I could go back in time and recommend to myself, movie studios will hire people to do what's called coverage, which is where they hire you to read scripts that nobody else wants to look at from people they've never heard of, and sort of write a one-page summary of each one. And that's sort of a good job to sort of get your foot in the door in the film industry, because essentially you want to take any job that'll get you into the organization, and then from there you can start meeting people and figuring out where you really want to be and sort of scheming to maneuver into the position you really want to be in. But often you really need to start with some really low-level position, and doing coverage is the thing that most of the people that I knew who did well did. If you don't have the resources to move to New York or LA, and you just want to be a screenwriter, you don't necessarily want to work in some other capacity in the film industry, there's a lot of opportunities online right now to just write your own stuff and film it super cheap with digital cameras and stuff and put it on YouTube and establish connections online and stuff like that. I guess it depends on if you're looking for a regular employment or you just want to develop your screenwriting abilities. But yeah, if you actually want a job, if you want someone to pay you to work in the film industry, yeah, you need to move to LA and you need to take some low-level job in somewhere in the film industry complex.
And then I guess speaking back to editorial too, and I'm just thinking, I'd say that journalism, like don't forget about journalism, like that counts as, writing and editing. Magazines, that also all counts as publishing and editing. And then on top of it, literary magazines. You might not get paid for it, but I know that Nick Sweeney, for example, has been writing book reviews for a literary magazine called the Somerset Review. He basically reads any of the submissions and forwards them on to the editor-in-chief, and then they choose them for the literary magazine. So, and there's a ton of literary magazines out there. So again, if you're willing to do it without being paid and do it on the side or whatever it is, that's another way to sort of have an internship or just a way to show that you've been working in editing or anything writing related as well.
Yeah, or developing your own blog.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And developing your own voice, and probably if you want to work for a specific magazine, developing your voice to their target audience. I know a couple of girls who wrote for me when I was features editor in The Circle, who are now working for books at Condé Nast, who also have their own blogs, and they run their own probably fashion blogs or home decor blogs, and they have developed their own following on social media. And that's just something you can show, oh, look how many people want to read what I'm writing. So you should probably hire me to write some things for you, especially now that magazines and other publications are trying to find the balance between their digital presence and their publishing print presence. Showing that you have kind of a grasp of both would probably be a good way to do that.
Yeah, and then one more thing I can add to that is blogs, I think, have definitely been helpful. I started a blog when I graduated school and just was writing either book reviews or just my thoughts on anything in general. And then, a couple of years down the line when I was going for my current job in audiobook publishing, a big part of my job is blog posts and social media. And so when I was going for the job, they asked me to send them samples. Writing samples, and if I hadn't been writing blog posts for the past couple of years, I wouldn't have been able to just show them that I have this fun voice, casual voice or something, because it would have just mainly been papers from school. So I think that's another thing you can add to your portfolio if you have a blog. You can say, okay, I did some of this fun writing as well, this list of the top 5 ways to read a book, or top 5 favorite ways that you
I think you should consider blogging as its own kind of medium now, because Working in fashion and jewelry, there's a lot of fashion bloggers that are that have agents, and there's a whole agency just for fashion bloggers, and you can get paid to use your photographs to show products on your blog, and companies are more than happy to send you things to review and to write. So blogging as a medium has really become this whole big thing, which is really crazy. I wish I would have gotten on the blog train, because there's fashion bloggers, I think like Atlantic Pacific or the Glamour Eye, if any of you are into fashion, like they make thousands of dollars on their images and their one blog post, and it's like, really? But don't count that out as a writing medium for yourselves.
That does count.
Should we talk about, you can also, in publishing, not only get a job for a publishing company, but get a job at a literary agency?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's true. I mean, I never ended up getting into a literary agency, but so it's sort of like the three different like avenues for working in book publishing would be a literary magazine, or just generally magazines that like the New Yorker or something. I'd say that sort of counts. Big publishing companies, independent publishing companies that are smaller, or literary agencies. And when you're a literary agent, basically, right now pretty much the only way to get a book published is you don't submit to a publishing company like the way it used to be. All authors pretty much have to go through a literary agent in order to get their book published. And so when you're an agent, you're getting lots of submissions from all different authors, but you're also, a big part of that is making connections with publishers and editors and everything, and then you're sort of shopping their book around to publishers. So that's as an agent. But then there are other aspects of literary agencies. For example, a lot of the time, literary agencies retain the foreign rights to books, and so you could work in subsidiary rights for a literary agent, which then would mean that you're selling the rights. Like how I mentioned when I worked in subrights for Simon & Schuster, you could be selling the translation rights for a Chinese version of this author's book, and then you make money on that. And also agents usually retain the the film rights and TV rights for books as well. So if you have if you get into that and have an author that, has a book optioned for a TV series, you can get royalties on that, or, you get a part of that as well as the author. So, agencies, though, I think for some reason I've found it harder to find info on when they're hiring and everything, but you can Google, I think, literary agencies in New York or something, and then see a list. You go to their websites. They usually always have an email for somebody. So then you could reach out to somebody like that. So they might not necessarily have a job posted, but you can say, hey, here's my resume, blah blah blah. I'm interested in interning or do you have any positions open? And I think that's a way that you can sort of get into an agency, because again, I don't think that they usually post positions because they're usually a lot smaller. But apparently, if you work in an agency, you have a lot more time, and you're not necessarily working 9 to 5 all the time, and so a lot of people like that lifestyle a lot better. Yeah.
I'm finding it difficult to convince my family that there is a future in an English, like having an English major and an English career, because I feel like a lot of people, not just my family, but a lot of people still have a very old school thought process behind things like business, medicine, and law are like the still big things that people are successful in. And I don't know, I know it's like an up and coming thing, and everything you guys have been saying is like really positive about it. But I just was wondering if you guys struggled with that, or how you might have been able to prove people wrong or convince people that there is a future in this.
I think if anything, your English major is more transformative. You could really do anything because your interests are so wide, and your skills as an English major are so, I guess, broad, but also concentrated at the same time on like the important things of having a job, like critical thinking and strategy and creativity. So I think that you could just be like, well, I could really go into anything, and at least I'll like it because I know this is an industry that I'm interested in, or anything like that. I think that business majors are so, I don't know if anyone here is a business major, but I think that a business major is so very defined, like that. Like an English major is just basically do anything.
Yeah, and I think it depends on how you're measuring success. Like if you're measuring it based on a doctor's salary or a lawyer's salary or something
Yeah.
like that, that might be successful in its own way. But I think when you're an English major, when you have more humanities interests, and maybe you're not necessarily becoming a lawyer or a doctor, but you sort of have the potential to really do a lot of really fun, cool, creative things, and then that can lead to maybe at least making a good salary, and if not, maybe like even a better salary. Or people definitely climb the ranks in publishing companies. They climb the ranks in marketing firms. They climb the ranks in fashion.
Right.
Everything. And so I'd say that maybe there are some hard and defined ways to be traditionally successful in the U.S. like as a doctor or lawyer. But I'd say that being an English major opens you up to some of the really cool cutting edge things that are changing really rapidly right now.
I wonder if like one of the things we could do is like think about ourselves as like in terms of like I'm an English major, and what that means is I'm an editor, like already.
Yeah.
In a way. I'm a writer. I am a skilled user of social media.
Mhm.
I am a storyteller. And you
Yeah.
find me an organization that doesn't somewhere along the line need somebody to tell their story persuasively and clearly. And so maybe to those people, like I think we shouldn't, I know in my own experience, I think sometimes I'm a little too apologetic about it, like, oh, well, whatever, like that kind of, maybe that's just me, but like, that I think we could give these kind of like badass names to the stuff that we do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I am creative visually and verbally.
Mhm.
I'm, give names to it. Name those skills in a very concrete way. Maybe we should all have like a list of like 4 things, and you could picture like your annoying uncle at Thanksgiving or something. And maybe like have like just as it's good to have a business card ready,
Yeah.
maybe it's good for us all to have like a stock answer ready that's on like thick paper to whack someone with, like or the verbal equivalent of that, and just nail it and be like, really, you don't know anyone that needs a writer, an editor, a persuasive speaker? Like, does that make sense?
Yeah,
like,
no, that's
I don't think we should back off of that. That
Mhm.
like.
Totally.
Because that's what you guys were saying, like the human. You said, I mean, it's like, what are the humanities for? Well, it turns out like people still want to be like human with each other, right? Like,
Yeah.
God forbid, or something.
Yeah, unfortunately, you're at your job for 9 to 5 every day for like the rest of your life. So
Yeah.
it would be great if you could actually talk to other people and know that there are other humans out there, and not just, I'm the director of something, or they have lives too, and they have interests as well. And when you connect on those levels, then your job is just so much easier.
Mhm.
But yeah, I guess I love my major. I had a really good time here.
And I found too that like even if I was working with people that might not have been English majors, if I talk about how much I love reading or writing or books, a lot of people are really interested in that too. So even though they didn't necessarily major in it, you can connect with them on it. At the tech startup, I was surprised at how many people just are huge readers, and like my boss would be recommending books to me, and like my coworkers would be recommending books, and then you connect with them on a level that is outside of your typical work day, and it's really fulfilling.
What are your guys' interests?
Sorry.
Yeah,
Oh,
I have
question.
a question. What would be your suggestion for someone my age to market themselves? Because what you're addressing is very young. I'm an English major, but the reason I came tonight was because I am investing this enormous amount of time and making all these sacrifices. For me, there is really not the time that you guys have to dabble here and dabble there. It's a competitive field.
Yeah.
How would you suggest, or do you have a suggestion as to how I would market my skills
Mhm.
at my age?
What were you doing? Were you doing anything before this, or like were you in another industry?
I worked
Yeah.
as a teaching assistant for special ed for some time.
Yeah.
Before that, I was in the medical field.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I mean, are you interested in teaching at all, or
No.
Yeah.
No, my being a teaching assistant is by accident, by necessity. The passion that I have always had is exactly what brought me to where I am.
Yeah.
You know, I've been in the world, and still, this is what pulled me constantly. But you know, in some sense, I'm sitting here feeling sort of out of sort. Because you're suggesting all these different things, and I can't picture myself in any of those places. So, I mean, I'm here not just because I want to get an education. I'm here because I want to do something with that. So,
I'd say, I mean, I think it still is the same approach. You know, being open to anything. I mean, being open to an editorial assistant position, like even though like sometimes it seems like younger people are more inclined to take a job like that or something. I'd say that it works the same way with building a career. You sort of do sometimes have to start from the bottom in that way. So I'd say, do what you're comfortable. Go for what you're comfortable with. If you don't want to create a website or something, like if that sounds like too much, like something you're not interested in, you can still get jobs without that. And I'd say that I definitely have seen people come into publishing that are older. I know that there was one intern when I was at Simon & Schuster where I think he was definitely in his 40s, and he had been in the Army before that, and so but then he wanted to make the change into publishing, and so if anything, you kind of stand out when you're not some fresh person out of college as well. So I'd say don't be dismayed at that, especially when you're going, I mean, it doesn't have to be publishing, it can be, any industry, like how we're saying. So I'd say be open, like how we're, pretty much open about it.
And I think you already, like, just talking briefly about your story, that your voice is already very unique and your story is already very unique. So taking those things, since you have more experiences, taking all the things that you loved about your experiences and putting that down on paper and, creating your own job description and matching that with things that with actual jobs at other companies is something that you could do. I know, like we've talked about blogging, but if you're not interested in the internet and the social space, I think like local newspapers are more than happy to have columns, like a columnist come in to write freelance. My company uses a lot of freelancers, other marketing companies, other tech companies, they hire freelance writers all the time because, you're a big marketer, but that doesn't mean that you can write. I encounter lots of really bad writers every day. So, I mean, you already have kind of your unique voice. It just has to be, down on paper so you know exactly your skills and communicating that with, what you want to do. So I don't think it's just like a young person thing. I think anyone can just find what makes you unique, I guess.
Yeah,
Use those.
And when you have experience, too, that stands out as well.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, we kept thinking that we wanted tonight to be not just about like the job, the job process and college and career, but sort of the common geekery that unites us all. Like, we want to be professionally successful, but we want to hold on to the inner nerd and like, we're thinking about different ways to do it. I was just wondering, like, maybe as the last thing you could talk about, like, can you, looking back at your Marist experience, like, are there any just, like, I don't want to put you on the spot, but any, like, just sort of random geeky moments that you remember, like, just sharing with your friends, like, that was just, that sort of reflected the place that, like, literature and writing have in your life? Like,
Well,
That makes a thing.
I need to think too. The thing that's coming to mind for me, at least, was being in Literary Arts Society. I mean, seriously, we were all geeks and nerds, meeting every single night. Well, not every single Wednesday night, and just sharing our writing. And we'd go on like excursions to New York City to go to bookstores and everything. And now to this day, like every once in a while, I'll meet up with a few of them that were in Literary Arts Society with me, and we have our book powwow, and we just talk about at what we've been reading lately, and then we just talk about our opinions on Hemingway and things like that. And so it's really fun. And then you keep those connections going as well. So I'd say that was a lot of my geekery from Marist.
Yeah. One of my roommate for I think most of my college career, where it was also an English major, and we took the same classes so we could share books and buy sweatshirts. So we just share the same book because the sweatshirts here are so expensive, but we really wanted one every year. So we would take all the same classes, and we would just. Could you imagine that? Me and Megan O'Shaughnessy, like, sharing
I'm
books.
just trying to remember what sweatshirts you would wear.
Like all the Marist was. It was so cute.
Yeah.
But we would take all the same classes and share books, and we'd take classes with Leah Graham. I don't know if anyone's taken class with her here. We took her travel writing course, and we'd sit next to each other and just type and talk about what we're writing about, and then just exchange stories. And I'd steal a paragraph from her, and she'd steal one from me, and that's, it's collaborative. And that was probably the most fun. We took capping together. We took, what was the one under capping? Research
methods.
Right. We took research methods together. So it was just like the most fun because she was interested in Anne Boleyn, and I was more interested in children's literature. Was my thesis, and all my stuff was on that. So it was really interesting to just collaborate with each other, and we always had really nice sweatshirts.
And I'd say, like, when you're, if you stay friends with some people from Marist as you get older, like, you do always come back to talking about professors. So sorry, guys, but you guys are a big topic of our conversations.
And friend them all on Facebook.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely friend them on Facebook.
Yeah.
All right, well, maybe in that spirit, we'll just break for some food and, network with one another, and just hang out.
Yeah.
So,
maybe I'll just talk about those
what
things.
do you have here?
Well, I just have a catalog that I worked on for the audiobook, so anyone feel free to come and take a look at these. These are audiobook samplers as well. Like, one is on audiobooks that we have focusing on bullying, which I think is a really big topic near and dear to my heart, and I think a lot of people feel very strongly about bullying. And then we also have one about Common Core, so audiobooks that support the Common Core. So if you guys want to just take a look at some of these marketing materials, that's why I brought them. And yeah.
And I guess we would all these guys have to work tomorrow morning.
Oh God,
so
I forgot about
it
that.
was really generous of you guys to come up on a weeknight.
Oh, for sure.
It works so much better for everyone here. So we really appreciate you coming, and David also for putting in your 2 cents. It's really a welcome to our community here at Marist. So can we give him like a little round of applause? All right, and I think they have some time. They don't have to make their train, so they have some time to mingle if you want to practice schmoozing or eat some food or something. Can I take some?
Yeah,
Can I take some
yeah,
swag that you brought?
Yeah, feel free to give it to
this guy.
And when you asked the question about visual stuff, I was like, that is the part of it. We have to choose. Like,